Hello! Welcome to another Sunday Afternoons with Reverend Lucretia. I'm so glad you're here. And for those of you who are watching online, I just want to remind you that the link will be down in the description for the song. The song is a huge, big part of my talk, and it makes a huge, big difference. I will be talking about some of the lyrics, but if you listen to the song first, you'll get the meaning of what the talk is. So the name of the talk is One People United, and the song is We Are the World. We Are the World was written in January 28th, 1985. It was recorded and produced by Quincy Jones. It was written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. It was done in one take in one evening with over 45 major artists. It was done for famine relief in Africa. Over 7 million copies were sold, and over $60 million was raised for the African relief effort. And so there were over 45 major artists that were there, including people like Cyndi Lauper, Huey Lewis, Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson, Smokey Robinson, Tina Turner, Paul Simon, Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, and Bob Dylan. After the 7.0 magnitude earthquake that happened in Haiti in 2010, another version was released called We Are the World 25 for Haiti. And just this March, Lionel Richie proposed that another version be done to help with the pandemic that we are going through right now. So I'm going to read the lyrics so that you can see how they are part of the talk that I am giving and how important the words are. It says, "There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying, and it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere soon will make a change. We're all part of God's great big family, and the truth, love is all we need. Send them your heart so they know that someone cares, and their lives will be stronger and free, as God has shown us by turning stones to bread, and so we all must lend a helping hand. When you're down and out and there seems no hope at all, if you'll just believe, there's no way you can fall. Well, and let us realize that change can only come when we stand together as one. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones that make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and I." All right. So we are talking about One People United. And as you know, when I do a talk after I've finished writing it and I'm getting ready to go into actually saying it on Sunday, I try to sum it all up in 3 or 4 words. And the 3 or 4 words for this week are, it's up to us. So we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King. We're going to be talking about scriptural references to New Thought, interpretations about loving our neighbors. We're going to be talking about cultural blind spots, the work of Professor Cornell West, and a dynamic New Thought influencer, Emmanuel Acho. So a few weeks ago, I said that we were in the midst of 2 major crises, the pandemic and the deep emotional and spiritual divide, which is the prevalence of racism. As the song says, it's up to us to change the world. We are responsible for making this a different place than before we came here. God has given us the ability to use the strength and the bravery that He has put inside us and the ability to form intelligent thoughts to create conversations that will make a difference in this world. I have heard the quote, "Silence is compliance," and we cannot allow ourselves to put our heads in the sand any longer. I am asking that each one of us search our own hearts and minds to discover the predominant belief systems inside ourselves that we need to change so that we can have open, honest conversations. We need to say things like, you know what? Maybe I am part of the problem. I can't change you, but I can change me. John 13:34 says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so must you love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Romans 13:8 says, "Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law." Colossians 3:14 says, "And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity." 1 Peter 4:8 says, "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins." John 15:12 says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you." The command shows up 13 times in 12 verses in the New Testament, and also shows up in Jesus' last word in his farewell discourses to his disciples. So we're going to talk first about Martin Luther King. The March on Washington took place on August 28, 1963. Reverend Dr. King was introduced as the moral leader of the nation. He talked about 100 years before Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation, which was, he said, a beacon and light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of the withering injustice. He talked about not having the luxury of a cooling off or taking the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. This was 57 years ago. He said, "Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy, to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice." He talks about coming to collect on the promissory note, and that this promise that was made to the people of color in the Emancipation Proclamation, that a check was been returned for insufficient funds. He talks about lifting our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood, and making justice a reality for all of God's children. He said, "Let us seek not to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty storm. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, and that people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We will be able to hew out of the mountains of despair a stone of hope. We will transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. We will be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." And so we come to today, and we'll be talking about a series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. This is on YouTube. There are several different sessions of it now. It was written by Emmanuel Acho, who is an NFL player, who says he wanted to help educate white people to increase their knowledge fully and the understanding of the level of pain of the Black people so that they can help bring about a solution. He said, "Ears are open and hearts are open and are ready to be changed, and our world still has to hope because people are willing to let their hearts be opened. We have to move forward." He was asked the question, have we come a long way? And he said 57 years ago, interracial marriages were illegal. He stayed at a friend's house in Dallas, and he said 70 years ago, a Black man staying in a white man's house would be executed. He was asked, "Are you afraid of white people?" And he says, "I am cautious of white people. Water and electricity are both necessary for life, but if the interaction is negative, it is lethal." He said, "I still might use my cell phone in the bathroom, and a woman still could use a curling iron next to a sink, but they need to always be mindful that if the interaction is negative, it is lethal." So he was asked, "Do I have hope for the future?" And he says, absolutely. He had several guests. He had several different sessions, as I said, and he had several different guests. And in one of them, he had Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they brought their 5 children. And their 5 children actually asked some questions too. And he was asked about whether he had hope for the future, and he said no, because I talked to people like your dad, Chip and Joanna, and your mom, Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they said, 30 years ago, I saw the LA riots. 30 years ago, I am seeing these, and I will not let this happen again. And so they're saying that all of this can change because of conversations that could be had. And the conversations that he has are very difficult, I have to say. When I listen to them, some of the questions he asks are painful, and some of the answers that are giving are very difficult to hear for white people. So he says, this is what we need in life for white people and black people who know each other a little bit to reach out their hand and say, hey, I'm here. I wrote this for you, my white brothers and sisters, to increase your level of understanding so that you can increase your level of compassion and lead ultimately to change. I wanted to create a space where people can ask questions. And so what he does is at the bottom description level underneath the video, people ask questions and then he answers the questions. So one of the questions he got over and over again is, why are people rioting? And so the answer from Martin Luther King was, rioting is the language of the unheard. And what Emmanuel Acho says is, black people and hurt people are trying to get the attention of the oppressor. So an example that he gives, which visualizes it very well, is that he was riding down a path behind a white woman on a bicycle. He was on a bicycle, and he says to her, on your left, so she would know that he was coming up behind her. And then a second time as he got closer, he says, on your left, so that she could move over and he could get by. Third time, he gets really close and he says, on your left. And he sees that she's got earphones on and she can't hear him. And the collision was not avoided. They crashed. And that's just a perfect example of how white people can't hear the truth sometimes because they've got blinders on their eyes and earphones on their heads, and they just don't know better. And his whole point is, we need to change by educating. White people need to understand what the black people's experience are, because white people have been oppressing the black people for hundreds of years, and they don't get what's going on. They don't understand the level of oppression that has taken place. So his videos have been viewed over 30 million times. He says he believes there is hope for the future because he got a letter from a 73-year-old white woman who said, after watching your video, I realize I still need to change. Please don't give up on me yet. I love you, my son and my brother. So white privilege, let's talk a little bit. He got a lot of questions about what that is. And he says, I'm not saying your life has not been hard. I'm saying that your skin color has not contributed to the difficulty. If you want to be the solution to world peace, you simply need to educate yourself more. So there's another video that was put out, I saw it, I believe on Facebook, where it's a visual example of what white privilege is, and there's a line of, it looks like teenagers, like high school kids, probably 60 or 70 of them, and they're all lined up in a straight line, and they're getting ready for a race. And so he says, white privilege, here's an example of what the race looks like. Step forward 2 steps if you have the following. Both parents are still married. Step forward 2 steps if you grew up with a father figure in the home. If you have access to private education. If you had free access to a tutor. If you never had to worry about your cell phone being turned off. If you never had to help mom and dad with the bills. If you don't have to pay for college and it's not related to athletic ability. If you never wondered where your next meal was coming from. This has nothing to do with anything that you have done. And I thought that that was a great illustration also of white privilege. So he says, if you turn around and look, white people are just all these yards ahead because of nothing they've done. Just because of the color of their skin, just because of the bodies that they were born into, they've got all of this head start just because of the bodies they were born to, not related to lifting one finger, not related to anything that they've done. So he says, does this mean black people cannot race? And he said, no, absolutely not. Black people got to run their race and white people got to run their race, but you got to understand that white people are way, 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 way ahead because of the hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression that have been placed on black people. So he tries to describe that that's part of what white privilege is. So we're going to move ahead to another thought leader, Cornell West. So Cornell West has been dealing with this issue for over 50 years. He's a professor of philosophy at Harvard Divinity School. He's author of the book Race Matters that was written in 1994. And he participated in the funeral that just happened for George Floyd. And he said that only love existed at the funeral. There was no mention of hatred or revenge. He said, if there was a race war, we've got a lot of white brothers and sisters on our side now, and that makes a huge difference. And we've got black folk and red folk and indigenous people and Asians and so forth. It's a matter of integrity and honesty and justice and love. They kept the funeral on the high ground, and that was a beautiful thing. He says, we will all bounce back because we've got a love that the world cannot ever take away. At that point, Anderson Cooper started tearing up, and Cornell West responded with, no, we're all in this together, brother. And the beautiful thing about it is Socrates never cried, but Jeremiah does, and Jesus does. We cry because we care. We cry because we are not numb inside. I've been fighting this fight for over 50 years. The funeral's focus was all about love and justice, and what comes out of it is a desire to make the world a better place. He asks the question, can we hold on to integrity and honesty and decency? And he says fortitude and courage equals backbone, and that's something that people of color have an tremendous amount of. So One People United is about learning the lessons from the past and about making changes for the future. Scripture has taught us so many times that God wants us to view each other as being filled with love because we come from a place of love. That is how we were created. Every single cell of our body comes from love. It is who we are. While the work of the past and the work of brilliant new people like Emmanuel Acho are very important, it is up to each one of us individually to change the course of history. Scripture makes it abundantly clear that who we are is love and that we are all part of the family of man. While this has been huge discrepancies in the way this has played out physically, we need to stay true that as metaphysicians we have the power to change ourselves by monitoring our thoughts and focus on what we believe to be true. If it is our belief system that our thoughts create our reality, then we can change our thoughts and we can change the way we interact with every single human being that we come in contact with. The scriptural references all support the notion that we are made from love, and it is in every single cell of who we are. From the metaphysical Bible interpretation of John 13:31, we read, peace and goodwill are expressions of love that free man to develop his intellectual and spiritual powers to the full. Hatred, strife, and contention interrupt or retard his development of God-likeness. Jesus kept faith with the Father and believed only him was in his disciples and in the other men, regardless of appearances. The basis of the new commandment is based on the impersonal principle of love, that is, love for love's sake, regardless of the attitude of those who are loved. One people united means that we love our fellow man without any judgment of his character, and that we love in the way that God taught us to love, unconditionally, to the best of our abilities. Humans have the propensity to judge prior to investigation, and that means that our outpouring of love is based on our belief system, which are distorted. That's why we need to come to the work of identifying that inside ourselves that needs to be changed, exploring our inner biases, and understanding that we come to interactions with others without a clean slate. And we realize it is our job to consciously work at viewing each single person in front of us with an open mind and an open heart. In the interview with Emmanuel Acho, a concept called white allergies was discussed. It highlights how sometimes white people have assumptions that are so core to how they were raised that they're not even aware that they have them. It is our job to question our beliefs every single time we are meeting another human being. It is our job to see only the best and the highest so that we can encourage every single person that we're with to live up to their potential. How did Jesus love his disciples? By seeing them as spiritually perfect. Faith in the unfailing love, the divine love, loving one another as love perfected, the perfect expression of love without condemnation or judgment. He held them in the thought of their innate perfection, regardless of their appearances. Love intelligently directed and truly expressed. The love of Jesus, when fully exerted, has power to protect its object and stirs those who receive it to express the idea that is held for them, to see their potential and their highest good, to encourage them to believe in themselves. Charles Fillmore in The Mysteries of John says, love is a divine attribute. It is an idea in the one mind of God. God is love and love is God. It is the quality in being of who we are. Divine love is broad and unlimited. It is a universal and harmonizing power. We develop love in our hearts by asking daily for the infinite love of the Father to be poured out upon us, by praying, meditating, and affirming that we are one with and express at all times the perfect love of God. Love each other more by seeing only their best and highest good. One People United is about knowing that for every single person whose lives we touch, we want only their best and highest good, their health, their happiness, and the fulfillment of their dreams. Corinthians 3:14 says, and above all these things put on love, which is the bond of perfectness, and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, so that which we also may be called into one body, and ye all be thankful. Leviticus 19:18 says, thou shalt not take vengeance upon, nor hear any grudge against, the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as themselves. And the interpretation of that, according to Charles Fillmore, is to respect the rights of others rather than to oppress or rob shows consideration. It develops an awareness of the one life. The family of man is based on the belief if God is the Father of all, then all men and all women are brothers and sisters in a universal family, and the Christ consciousness, we are all one. From the Unity Correspondence School Series 1, Lesson 6, it says, when the race begins to live in divine order, so that perfect harmony is experienced in all the activities on earth, the body, and in heaven, the mind, a new condition will exist. The law of the Spirit of life in God, active in the hearts of men, will inspire them to turn to God for guidance, or that divine wisdom and love will be expressed on earth. Each person will be as conscious of the family of God as he is of his self, and he will be fully alive to the purpose and needs of his fellow man. The purposes of the Spirit will be full, namely coordination and cooperation through creation. It is our job as people with open minds and open hearts who are tuned into the Spirit of God, who lives inside us, outside us, and all around us, to treat each person with dignity and respect, and more importantly, to see the God in every single person that we are interacting with. We are all part of God's great big family, and we have come to a crisis point. While we cannot change the whole family, we can change ourselves. I am asking you to search within yourself and root out the negative, unloving, unbiased principles that are causing you to treat others in a way that are less than what God would want for us. There is a great potential for change. There are so many brilliant minds that are having discussions right now and leading us to have open conversations, sharing publicly about what we are going through so that we can understand how to make a change. It is up to us to treat each other with love and compassion so you can see only the best and highest good and understand that we are all one people united in God's family of man. Change can only come when we are all united as one. One people united. And so it is. Thank you very much. And so if you liked this video and you thought it offered ideas that were helpful, please like it and share it, and please subscribe to this channel. Thank you so very much.